You're looking good, and it feels good to be with you today. Hello, I'm Kendall Bryan Hunter, and I am author of this book, Consider My Servant Job. It's a spiritual commentary on the book of Job, dealing with the problem of pain and human suffering. And if you're going through something terrible right now, I invite you to take a look at it. You'll feel great once you read it. This is the Eyes of Faith podcast, where I talk about news from the perspective of Christ and the doctrine of Christ and from the perspective of faith. So today's theme is, look, Ma, no kings. We had the recent No Kings protest. It really accomplished absolutely nothing. It was just sort of people hanging out, venting, patting each other on the back, crying. But nothing was accomplished. Now, if you remember a couple podcasts earlier, I did a podcast called Charlie Kirk and the Pink Elephant Effect. And why does people on the left see things that just aren't really there? We do not have a king. What happened is that, January 6th really happened. I'm not denying it. It happened. However, Trump did leave office. He handed the football over to Biden, the auto pen president. Life went on. Then they won another election. But, why does the left think there's a king? Just stop and think about this. Ronald Reagan made this quote. He said, the trouble with our liberal friends is not that they are ignorant, but they know so much that isn't so. They're not ignorant, but they know so much that isn't so. And part of this goes back to the model I talked about. People on the left operate within a three-way grid. It's feelings, fairness, and friends. There's they base decisions on feelings, on emotion. They base decisions on fairness, that is egalitarianism and distributive justice. And also in friends, community, social cues. And part of the reason why you have this phenomenon of seeing things out there, which I call the pink elephant effect, and that comes from Disney, the Dumbo movie, where when you get drunk, you see pink elephants, and it's just a common expression in America. And so that's the point of the thing. It's like you're like a bunch of people seeing pink elephants, things that just really aren't there. So when they make an assertion, they'll say something just doesn't feel wrong. It feels wrong. Well, who is it? Who is this that's feeling? Because there's a depersonified agent. Something that's just happened to be there. It's an internal emotion. But how do you universalize it? Sigmund Freud talked about this in his article on narcissism. He said people are narcissistic, have really three qualities. One is they have omniscience of thought. They just, whatever they happen to think happens to be true, and they think they know more than they really know, the Dunning-Kruger effect, although he didn't use that term. The second thing that Freud talked about was thaumaturgy of words, that you can speak things into existence. Just by saying stuff, it's suddenly true. This is wrong. Well, can you provide some rationale behind it? No, it just is. You try that in a court of law. Your Honor, my client's innocent, and if you can't see it, the problem's with you. It just is. The last thing is magical thinking, but those are all tied together. Now, it's interesting, so that's how God operates. God's omniscience, and let there be light, and there was light. You can speak things into existence. But us foolish mortals do not have that ability, but people on the left operate with that. And listen very carefully. You just have to listen to how they make statements of validity. Well, this is validity because I feel a certain way. This is valid because there's a social movement, there's social cues I'm picking up on. But if you feel something, feelings aren't facts. And you can be mistaken about your feelings. You feel angry. I buy you a chocolate milkshake. You feel better. Your feeling is no more potent and valid than a chocolate milkshake. That's interesting, too, is as you try to impose your feelings upon reality. And what this is with the left is the appropriate disgust of Donald Trump. In some ways, Donald Trump is a disgusting individual. But you had no problem voting for Bill Clinton, who was also equally disgusting. Bill Clinton was just a little bit more slick about it than Donald Trump, but at the same level. You voted for him, or you voted for his wife, Bill Clinton's wife. When Trump does the same things and he's just a little less agile and more crude about it, you have a problem. Double standard. But as you're imposing your emotions on reality, that's where you have the need for labeling. You're trying to, you think you're omniscient and you think that you can speak things into existence, so you start labeling things, labeling or even libeling things. Insulting, and it just goes to insults. That's why left responds with insults. They don't have any factual basis for their beliefs, and so they insult you, which is a form of relationship terrorism. So feelings, fairness, and friends. Basing things solely and exclusively upon a person's feelings is anti-civilization. It's just like you're wearing your own virtual reality goggles. This is what I see. This is what I see. I can see there's a king running America. Okay. So Trump had no kings. There never was a king in the first place. What they think there was one. And that's because when they make decisions, there's no rational. It's an emotive decision, so they have to concoct a rationale to justify their feelings. If I remember a number of years ago, there's a woman who got mad at me, and she said, "Well, you said this." So I did. I hit the pause button. Said, "I don't recall saying this. Let's hit the pause button for 24 hours." And this is through an email. And so I said, "Let's hit the pause button for 24 hours." So the next day, I asked Sister So-and-so, "I don't recall ever saying that. Could you tell me when I said that?" And then she backed off and said, "Well, this is something else." And that's sort of the same tactic as if I had said this horrible thing, she'd be justified in her feelings, but I didn't say it. But so, to be honest, she was just lying about what I said in order to justify her feelings. And it's the same thing with the left is they don't like Trump. And my goodness, this guy's like Superman, impeached twice, indicted, and he's still president again. That ought to scare you. But does that make him a king? So this No Kings protest was solving an imaginary problem. And so when the protests are over, said, well, look, we had the King's protest, and I think we solved the problem. Well, the problem didn't exist in the first place. So no matter what you would have done, you would have had positive results. It's like burning an effigy. They've impeached Trump twice and indicted him. Kind of like Superman, you're firing 1,600 quadrillion rounds of ammunition to him, and it's just not stopping him. And so they burnt an effigy of him, felt the catharsis, but was an exercise in anti-reality. So, Pink Elephant. The pink elephant in this case was Trump as king. He never was. But they believe he was, and so they did this imaginary, they tried to solve an imaginary problem, anti-reality. Trump in the ballroom. Now, we've always remodeled the White House. During the War of 1812, it was burnt. Just by way of background, I have a Bachelor of Arts in History, minor in Political Science, BYU. GPA was 5.43. Always remodeled the White House, burnt in the War of 1812. Chester A. Arthur remodeled it. That's President Chester A. Arthur's claim to fame, aside from having a nice lamb chops and mustache. So when they start complaining about this, the ballroom, they're just firing blanks. It's interesting to see how the pundits can convince people on the left that this is the real issue. Whatever happened to climate change, whatever to crime. What was the name of that Ukrainian girl who got her throat slit in the subway, and because the perpetrator was black, the victim was white, it just disappeared. Yeah, racial politics cuts both ways. So another pink elephant. It's just a non-issue. He's remodeling, renovating, and making the White House bigger and better. And that's an issue. What about feeding the poor? Well, we've been having welfare for almost 100 years, and it's gotten us nowhere. Maybe this isn't quite the problem. And you know, so the feeding the poor, that's fairness, that's distributive justice. Goes back to that model I created or talked about. You didn't have any problem when Obama put the basketball court in, did you? When Bill Clinton had a ground with the track, and you're holding your Democrat presidents to a different standard than Republican presidents. That's another issue, double standards. No Kings, point 3, Trump in the San Francisco deployment. So he's going to send troops to San Francisco. This is where I disagree with President Trump. Should have sent them to Oakland first. Now, I was born in Oakland, and what they did is they were starting to station the troops at what was originally called Government Island. Is that they have several islands in the San Francisco Bay: Alcatraz, Angel Island, Yerba Buena. Alameda is the city of Alameda is where I'm from. Now it's an artificial island. It was originally a peninsula. They dredged it around the back, then dumped the dirt on the other side of the island, and so that's why Oakland does really good business with shipping, because it's non-union. San Francisco's union, it's dead, but Port of Oakland isn't. But they also created this other smaller island. It was originally called Government Island when I was a kid, but it's called Coast Guard Island now. That's where they have stationed the Coast Guard cutters. So I've actually been to it once. Now, the funny thing was, it's connected by a bridge, but you have to go to Oakland. So it's not actually directly connected to Alameda. Now, Alameda used to have a naval air station there. It was capacitated to hold 4 aircraft carriers. Mostly had 2 when I was a kid there. We had some guided missile cruisers, the Arkansas and the California. Some of the supply ships were Roanoke. They have some old merchant marine ships. I was about to say Liberty ships, but that's not the right term. It's now home to the USS Hornet. So if you're in San Francisco and want to see the Hornet, that's the one that picked up the Apollo 11 astronauts, the aircraft carrier, go to it. So they started sending troops there, so it's kind of funny seeing things in my hometown in the news. Later, Trump backed off. Apparently, some of the people persuaded him, and so he said, okay, we'll draw this down. Does that sound like a king? Or is this accusation of a king just another pink elephant? And what's the pattern here? What pattern are you seeing, or what pattern aren't you seeing here? The imaginary problems that you don't like him. You lost the election. Impeached twice, indicted. That still didn't stop him. That's some interesting psychology, I have to say. But Donald Trump's a neighbor you're supposed to love and forgive and turn the cheek 70 times 7. Same thing with Biden and Harris, Bill Clinton, Obama. These are all neighbors we're supposed to love. Let's look at this through the eyes of faith. When Jesus Christ said, "Judge not," that applied to Trump, Biden, Harris, Obama, Clinton, Bush. But you can the left seems to compartmentalize. They'll say "judge not" only when it's useful. It's sort of a hand grenade in their tool chest that they throw at people occasionally on their selective targets, but it's not a universal principle. So think about that. Is your political ideology teaching you not to love people, or to only love the homeless people, or to use them as mascots, as Thomas Sowell talked about? So 12 minutes. AMAC. I'm a member of AMAC and AARP, so I'm playing the field. I get benefits from both sides, and so it's important to pay attention to what the other side is saying. Don't close your mind to dissenting views. Don't get stuck in a silo or an echo chamber. AMAC, they had, I think this may be Charlie Kirk's last message, and they printed an article that was written by Charlie Kirk. As you understand, with magazines, they get them set up months ahead, so when they roll out. So it's not just like a newspaper, which does every day. Magazines take a little bit more time. So they had a nice complimentary note, and they published it. That's a wonderful idea. I'm glad they did. It was interesting what Charlie Kirk's last message was a warning about Mamdani, the radicalized Marxist candidate for mayor. That's just more gasoline on the house fire. Speaking of Mamdani, Cuomo was running a campaign against him. Now, he posted this AI-generated video. That's interesting. First time a major person used an AI-generated video. It was posted, then suddenly pulled down. Okay, so people, that's the intentional tactic. That's how you draw attention. That was intentional, and that is a tactic they're using. You draw a buzz. Oh my gosh, what is this? It's called the forbidden fruit factor. Oh, you can't see this? Well, I'm going to see it just to spite you. So I saw it in Glenn Beck's X feed. It was stunning. It was flawless. It's as monumental as the LBJ, what's it called, Dandelion video. It's devastating. For those of you who are a little bit young, there's a candidate named Vernon Robinson did a Twilight Zone video. So I posted links to it in the comments. You got to see these two videos. They're just devastating. But My goodness, that video deserves an Oscar. It gets into sensitive area. There is some stereotyping in there. Him eating rice with a hand. They have a stereotypical black pimp, 1970 black exploitation in there. But it's drunk driving grandmother. Where's the beef? It's edgy. It gets into some South Park forbidden humor area. But it's a necessary message. It's tough love. There's that saying, before you shoot the arrow of truth, you must dip it in honey. There's truth in that. It's edgy, but it raises serious issues. About, crime is just a social construct. It's the reason why we're attracted to Trump is because the left is just offering us the anti-civilization, anti-reality. I'm basing things on feelings. So we're going to base things on my view through my virtual reality goggles, and everyone needs to watch the same channel that I am. So you're on your virtual reality goggles, you're on Waikiki Beach, but your reality, you're in the Yukon and you're freezing to death, but you think you're in Waikiki Beach. There's some other news. The LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, has updated their edition of the online edition of the scriptures, doing more tweaking. That's something that's been going on my entire life. As the history gets better and better and more refined, we're doing some changes. I welcome it. When I was a kid, we had 2 fewer sections of the Doctrine and Covenants. Section 137, 138 weren't canonized when I was a little kid, and not sure why they're not canonizing the Family Proclamation. Still waiting on the full Joseph Smith translation Bible, which the church could produce like a snap of the fingers. There you go. Cultural news. Jim Carrey has been cast as George Jetson in the live-action Jetson movie. Now, a while back they had the Flintstone movie. First one had John Goodman and who's the guy in Dark Helmet? I can't remember his name. Rick Moranis, a Canadian actor. Jim Carrey is also Canadian. So the first one went well. The second one was just sort of a direct-to-video type thing. Do you remember, speaking of the future, do you remember Disney's Tomorrowland movie? Well, neither do I. The only concern I have with Jim Carrey is that it's just an age issue. He's wrinkly, and you can see I'm doing the same thing right now. So what happens when you get older? He certainly has the energy. They did that he did this Hedgehog movie and seems up to speed, but just concerned about the plastic face Uncanny Valley with it, if they'd have to de-age him, or like you said, it's just you have to get a age appropriate role for the person. Harrison Ford, 103, and he's still, here's my bullwhip. It looks like a Hollywood money grab with old property. However, there's also the Mummy effect. You remember the Mummy came out in the 1990s. The first one was good. The second one was a rewrite of the first. Third one, same character, different actor, which is a jump the shark. There you go. But first of all, so I think Hollywood's beyond salvage right now. They deserve all the money that they're losing. I'm a shareholder in some studios, and as a shareholder, like with Disney and Warner Brothers, which is they're putting themselves up for sale. These companies are not acting in my best interest as they produce garbage. Like when Warner Brothers doesn't release the Coyote versus Acme movie, or the that Batgirl movie with Brendan Fraser. You're not acting in my best interest. I'm voicing my concern. For me, I'm finishing up watching Stargate SG-1. I never watched it in the 90s, but I've missed some stuff because I was in college and I was working. I just out of the things I was focusing on. But Babylon 5, Stargate SG-1. I'm going to take a break from Stargate before I start watching Atlantis. But good series. You're better off watching the rerun of that, or maybe a rerun of The Twilight Zone. Now, speaking of Jim Carrey and The Twilight Zone, a number of years ago, I did some articles for the now defunct Examiner, where it was called Rod Serling and the Devil. Oh, The Devil and Rod Serling, where I talked about some of the Twilight Zone and some other issues, and fun writing, some of my contribution to pop culture. I've seen pirated, unsourced copies floating around the internet, but yeah, I claim credit for it. Ken O'Brien Hunter, The Devil and Rod Serling. And I didn't finish it, but Jim Carrey would have been perfect for a Twilight Zone episode. For example, he did some movies, The Truman Show, Liar Liar, and The Majestic. Truman Show, that's a lot like the episode A World of Difference, Liar Liar. Twilight Zone episode, Penny for Your Thoughts. Although it's a little bit closer to Mel Gibson's movie, What Women Want. The Majestic, that's a real nice Frank Capra movie. The problem with The Majestic is the framing story. If it just started with some guy in a boat just floating into the town, it would have been perfect. They had some Cold War, loyalty hearings, which really wrecked the movie. But yeah, Jim, if I was going to do a Twilight Zone movie, definitely I'd write a script around, find some script that's perfect for Jim Carrey. He has the range. I feel like deep down he has a good soul. He's honest about how shallow and corrupt Hollywood is. As the cliche goes, he climbed the ladder of success. Found it was leaning against the wrong wall. I hope he has a good financial investor, but he's a bankable actor. But he's like Robin Williams. These comedians, they can surprise you, the frenetic energy and such. So 2130, Alyssa Grenfell, she is a sort of a up-and-coming church critic. She did a video about what's called, incorrect name of the church, backflips, people doing backflips. That's what we call a slow news day. And I don't think she executed it real well. She's treating it, her tone of voice and her demeanor, she's treating it like it's a serious thing. When you have a slow news day, you have to make fun of it. So you sit there with a bag of popcorn and, well, slow news day, let's do some moves up, people doing backflips. That's how you do it. You have some fun, you realize it's stupid, do some meta humor in there. So Lisa Grenfell, she got really old really quick. This is her jump the shark moment, Alyssa. So I also hope you have a good financial advisor too, with all the money you're making. Dave Ramsey. So Alyssa Grenfell, 3 things to notice about her. She got some financial assistance by John DeLynn from Incorrect Name of the Church Stories. Now, when you watch her, here's a life pointer. There's a principle called beauty bias. People who are physically attractive get treated differently than us, ugly people. The Uglo-Americans, as Rush Limbaugh used to call us. She looks like the actress Miranda Otto. So she has beauty bias. And are you paying attention, or just because she has some very profound, compelling things to talk about, or it's just because it's a blonde Barbie doll? There's a movie called Hot Chicks, had nothing to do with this. The last thing, I was watching some of her videos, like I said, she's got really old really quick. It's not really profound. It's just someone making fun of your church. She just happens to be more physically attractive. But notice her tells. When she's talking, she starts twirling her hair, or any face twitches or pauses. She may be editing these out. Like, I haven't seen her stuff recently. It's just, didn't float my boat. But when you see these tells when she twirls her hair, that's a sign of a guilty conscience. Okay, let's do the Life Some Pointers part of this podcast. It's where in my superannuity, my old age, talk about some of the things that got me through life and got me stuck here doing this video. Now, the point I want to talk about is having a strategy. When you go into any situation, what's your strategy? Now, this applies to, I'm going to talk about some specific cases. When I was in high school with my French teacher, her name was, true story, her name was Donna Donahue. My second French teacher's name was Glenn Fong. His wife was from Hong Kong. And yeah, this is about the time where they're getting smart. So, okay, we need to get out of Hong Kong. It's going back to China. But French teacher Donna Donahue, she talked about how you had to get cagey with your tests. You have to think ahead. Good advice, but just didn't stick. When I was in college, I had a classmate. Her name was Jenica Jensen. Very, very smart girl. Don't know what happened to her. I think I saw her once. She was into Japan, served her mission there. I haven't seen her in 30 years, so Hi, Jenica, if you're watching this. She's part of a study group, and she pointed out, studied when you have the essay part, you always get essay questions in your classes for a history class. Think ahead of an essay that you should write. So we had a thesis. She came up with a thesis statement, and that get your mind going. It's something that you, as you take the actual test, you tweak it. You go in there with an outline in your head, and you just tweak it to adapt to the actual question. Good advice. But it just didn't stick. After my mission, had a poli-sci class with Dave Magleby. I have to give it credit. He was invested, completely respected. He's one of these brilliant people. You should go down in history. Dave Magleby, very energetic. It's interesting. He's the dean of the poli-sci department. I think later Family, Home, and Social Sciences. And but he taught the poli-sci one, was it 100 or 110, just to keep things right. That was good of him. He kept in touch with the incoming classes. But he's talked about when you have a test, have friends in your study group write out essay questions, and you swap envelopes, and you do this as a practice test. There's essay questions. That's a lot of work. It would have yielded really good results. A little bit extra, that one extra thing you can do that makes a big difference didn't stick. Now it's sticking. Now that I'm graduated, so I'm passing this along. Have a strategy when you do something for class. For example, when you get a new job, what's your strategy? Well, your strategy be, okay, first of all, what's the job? What I'm exactly doing? Who your boss is. What are the relationships? What's the job? What's the relationships? Your boss, your coworkers, or you're nurturing. What are the power dynamics? The informal power structure. Who's the gossip? Who's the control freak? Who's a person who's a slough? Who's a person on their cell phone? Who's a person who's could be part of your success team? Form a success team. That's a good strategy. Have a brain trust of people that you work with. For example, at my work, we have two other of my coworkers who are very good with their finances, and we talk about approaches to investing and such. That's helpful to the person who, in their 50s doesn't have a 401k and think the stock market's risky. What's the job? What are the relationships? What are the power dynamics, the informal power structures, and learning names of people? Who are the people that you interact with? That's a good strategy. Serving a mission. So what do you know about the place where you're serving your mission? If you're in a foreign country, I served in Portugal, so I read up on Portuguese history. What's your strategy for learning the lessons? What's your strategy for dealing with companions or idiosyncrasies? What are your companions like? What do you have to change in order to make this a good companionship? Or you're praying to have charity for your companion? What's your strategy with the ward? Who's a ward mission leader? Which members of the ward are really active with missionary work, who have good contacts? What's your strategy with the investigators? What's your strategy for planning the day? Thinking through that. What's your strategy when your companion has different ideas? What's your strategy when your companion makes really bad decisions and he's your trainer? What's your strategy for learning the language? How do you cope with a difficult companion? How do you cope with the companion who makes really bad decisions and you're the junior companion? Last one, the strategies. What's your strategy for the second coming? Last two General Conference talks, President Nelson talked about the second coming. Today, our ward is holding a tri-ward Harry Potter party. We have 3 wards meeting in our building. We're having a big Harry Potter party. I'm not sure what the connection is, what the church and gospel connection is. I am witnessing a miracle where they're taking tithing dollar and transmuting it into butterbeer. But what does this have to do with the second coming that the prophets warned us about? Wise and foolish virgins. What about reading the book of Isaiah and the book of Revelation? The scriptures have been updated, so let's read the book of Revelation so we know what's going on. What's your temporal preparation? What's your spiritual preparation? What do you do when someone starts going crackpot theories about the second coming? So, moral is form a strategy. Daily planning is forming a strategy. What's your financial strategy? So strategies, that's the life pointer today. And that's the passing scene with the eyes of faith.